أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلام تسليما. الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected shaitan. May Allah bless our master, Sayyidina Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, companions, and give them peace. All praise is due to Allah, for he is sufficient for us. Peace be upon his slaves, whom he has chosen. As to what follows, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us for the Black Lessons on Nerves and Man Institute YouTube channel and Facebook platform. Our beloved Imam, he apologized for not joining us. As you all know, the internet is no good. So watch Allah. So you all are stuck with me. So let's see who's in the building. I see here Brother Abdul Dar's in the building, Brother Hakeem, my beloved sister Khadija's in the building, Brother Kenny, Brother Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. And as you know, we are covering the book Beyond Bilal by our brother Mustafa Briggs. May Allah reward him. May Allah bless him and his family for bringing this piece of work into light. And so this episode, we will be covering Mansa Musa. I won't be doing too much commentary. I'm just mostly going to be reading. And if you have any questions or comments, you are welcome to do so. Alhamdulillah, please share this video. Make this video not go viral, but if you feel like someone can benefit, and they don't even have to be Muslim, especially not being Muslim, they need to hear this, because as we've heard in past classes, a lot of our brothers and sisters, non-Muslim brothers and sisters, Pan-Africanists, get their information from the Orientalists, right? And the Orientalists are liars, and they are, enemies of Allah and the people, right? And on top of that, white supremacists, right? So they use proof from the very ones that they say they don't claim or they are against. But yet they use those same proofs to come at us Muslims to justify why they don't believe in what we believe, or they not feeling what we believe, and they want to stick with that story that, Islam, came, came, via the sword. Look at your brother. He just texted me talking about what happened to class. We in class. Where you at, brother? Hold on one second. SubhanAllah. Alhamdulillah. Can y'all hear me? myself up there twice. Hold on. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Hold on. Ah, mashallah. Let's see who came in the building. Brother Isa, my beloved Miss Joanne is here. My other beloved Sister Amina is here. Brother Imad, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam to Katu, alhamdulillah. Oh, thank you. Alhamdulillah. You know I love my colors. I love my colors. That black don't do all the time. I love black, no offense, but I need to have my color. Mashallah. Subhanallah. So as I was stating, am I echoing? Because I sound like I'm echoing. Am I echoing to you? If so, I'm gonna try to go back out and come back in. Let me know if I'm echoing. I don't want to like annoy anybody with this with these sounds. Do y'all hear me? I'm echoing? Because I can hear it real bad. Sound like I'm in a big stadium. It's okay? Okay, then we'll just deal with that. Alhamdulillah. I'm only a reflection of you, Sister Amina. Listen, that's why I tell my sisters. I'm a reflection of you. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Brother Abdul Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Long time no see. So we are going to start on page 65, Alhamdulillah, chapter 3. And the title of this chapter is The Land of Mansa Musa, Islam in West Africa. So I'm assuming that the Imam is going to try to come in into the room. He's having issues, mashallah. Yeah. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Uh-oh. There you go. Uh-oh. Wait a minute, y'all. Let me bring him in. There you go. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Alhamdulillah. You know how it is in Gambia. Network no good. I don't hear you. Are you talking?
Oh, I had unmuted myself because it sounded like it was echoing a lot. I was just about to read. Look, we're not playing around here.
Don't let me stop you. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Alhamdulillah. Let's get it.
Alhamdulillah. So, Bismillah. On February 14, 2018, American online media company Business Insider, the go-to for millions interested in the most up-to-date financial news, published their article about the richest person in history. Perhaps to the astonishment of many, it was not Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, or Warren Buffett, but the 14th century West African emperor Mansa Musa. Subsequent articles follow from other major media powerhouses such as the BBC, The Independent, History.com, and National Geographic, with the Smithsonian Magazine even advertising an exhibition opening at the Northwestern University's Block Museum exploring Mansa Musa's legacy. These articles were very timely, as 2018 also saw the release of the extremely successful Black Panther movie, whose main character, T'Challa, was not only Marvel's first Black superhero, but the king of the fictional African nation of Wakanda. Due to the natural vibranium reserves of his country, he was the richest superhero in the Marvel multiverse. Mansa Musa brought to people's attention that this archetype was just as much a reality as it was a fantasy. Contrary to the hundreds of years of Africa's depiction as the poorest and most undeveloped continent in the world. Mansa
I
Musa's
want
wealth,
to
however, came not from vibranium.
I want
You want to
to
say something? Okay.
yes, I want to mention that we should be on guard because there are there is more than one. There's at least one that I know about. Is actually a good filmmaker, but he has like a negative slant towards Islam. And he expressed his intention to make a movie about Mansa Musa. And so, every as what's mentioned here, they are focusing on his wealth because he may have been the richest person in human history, but they're definitely going to downplay his Islam. So, you can only expect so much when people make movies and productions out of real historic figures. Even when the people doing the movie are black, a lot of times these black people, they they have a distaste for Arabs because of some historical lies and some truths that they may have heard or come to know. And so they attach Islam with being Arab, and they hate Islam because of the way Arabs act. And so even big figures in our history, like Mansa Musa, who was Muslim, they're going to try to detach him from Islam and focus on his money and not his Islam. So if you see something come out in the near future, I warned you.
Bismillah. Mansa Musa's wealth, however, came not from vibranium, but rather from the vast gold reserves of the Mali Empire. Outside of the enormity of his wealth, Mansa Musa is also remembered for the 60,000 person caravan that he led on pilgrimage to Mecca, illustrating that not only was he a wealthy African king, but also a practicing Muslim, raising questions about West Africa's relationship to Islam and causing us to rethink what we know about the history of the region. Mansa Musa's story opened up avenues to discover and discuss an often overlooked and underexplored side of world history, far removed from the usual narratives of slavery and colonization that center Black history and far from the Middle Eastern, Asian, and North African setting of popular Islamic history.
This is important as well because, uh, like I've always mentioned before, ever since I became Muslim, I always loved history and paid attention to Islamic history. And I always noticed that in the books of history, especially when they show the color coded maps and they say, oh, the green, that's when, that's Muslim country, whatever. And I always noticed that in Africa, most of Africa is green, but there's not too much commentary or wording or verbiage showing how they became Muslim. And just as another side note, Mansa Musa, who's probably the most famous king from the Malian Empire, but the Malian Empire was a huge empire, and it included where I'm at right now in Gambia. It included Senegal and Gambia at the time. It was a huge empire. Uh, and Malian Empire, they were Mandinka. So, you know, the, they have a rich history. And this, where we at now in Gambia, the largest ethnic group here is Mandinka. Continue.
Alhamdulillah, I want to welcome our brother and sister Abdul Rahim and sister Mari. Wa alaikum salam to barakatuh. Thank you for joining us. Alhamdulillah, good to see
Rahim. No, I
you.
got to mess with Abdul Rahim, right? See, Abdul Rahim, he is in the United States with uh, all the mobile networks we got in the United States, 4G, 5G, Verizon, Xfinity, AT&T, and can't get a good reception. Here I am in Gambia, in the land of network no good, and I got reception. Come on, Abdul Rahim, step your game up, brother.
You a mess. Share with you. The Silk Road, Bismillah, the Silk Road and the Sand Road. To understand the relationship between West Africa and Islam in the Middle Ages, it is imperative to understand the state of global trade and diplomacy at the time, which involved not only a flow of goods across nations, but also a flow of knowledge and information. The preeminent trade route of the time, which connected the East to the West, was the Silk Road, spanning a myriad of connecting trade routes from China, the Middle East, and Europe. The Silk Road began in the first century in China and surrounding regions of Asia, including India and Persia, and expanding with the spread of the Roman Empire to Eastern Europe and the Middle East, offering both the East and the West unprecedented prosperity and cultural exchange. The Parthian Empire, situated in modern day Persia, Iran, served as the middleman between China and the Western world, supplying the Romans with materials that had taken their society by storm, especially silk. Among the products exchanged were fruits, vegetables, livestock, grain, leather, hide, tools, religious objects, artwork, precious stones, metal, and perhaps more importantly, language, culture, religious belief, philosophy, and science. Of the many material products, one proves specifically significant to the exchange of knowledge: paper. Invented in China during the 3rd century BC, it is spread via the Silk Road, arriving first to Samarkand around the 8th century, before moving to Europe and North Africa through the then Islamic ports of Sicily and Spain. This route saw its major expansion during the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, extending through the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, and its capital, the Emperor Constantine's imperial city, Constantinople, now known as Istanbul, in the Republic of Turkey.
I just want to highlight again, you see how we said also known as the Byzantine Empire? I want to emphasize once again that it became known as a Byzantine Empire after all of this happened. But as he clearly states, it was the Roman Empire. And as he mentioned, the Roman Empire divided and then it fell, right? And the eastern half of the Roman Empire was given its final blow by the Muslims. And it was started by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, carried to the next stage by Abu Bakr Siddiq, and just given a death blow by Umar ibn al-Khattab. And then it was just expanded upon by Uthman ibn Affan. And it kind of like came to a standstill during the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then after peace resumed again, when Muawiyah became the Caliphate, he just completely just over with. But I just want to mention that again. So when you hear Byzantine, don't think it's some other thing. No, it's the Romans. They just changed their name. They just rebranded themselves. And if you want a modern day example, the example I always use, Diddy and Puffy is the same person. They just use different nicknames, right? So when what they call him Diddy now, right? You don't think Diddy is a different person, like Puffy got a brother named Diddy. No, Diddy is Puffy. Puffy is Diddy. He just changed his name. It's the same person, same birth certificate, same company, same artist that he controlled. He just rebranded himself. And this is what the Roman Empire did after it fell. They rebranded themselves for Allah knows whatever reason, right? But like I said, I personally believe that they want to save themselves, which in their mind is the embarrassment by being, wiped off the map of existence by a new civilization, Islam. Because Rome, you think Roman, Greeks, you think these big civilizations, in my mind, just trying to put myself in their shoes, I can't see, historians who are of that persuasion are comfortable, just telling the truth about the narrative that a civilization that hadn't even been in existence 100 years just completely wiped them out and embarrassed them like that. So I believe this is why they changed. Uh, Instead of calling it the Roman Empire or the Eastern Roman Empire, they started calling it Byzantium. And Allah knows best. I could be wrong. Go ahead. Sure.
Wa alaikum salam to Brother Kill, Brother Anthony, Sister Fatima, and my sister Miriam. Thank you for joining us. Bismillah. As Islam spread, so did Islamic conquest, extending out of Arabia and annexing most of the Middle Eastern and North African territories of the Byzantine Empire before eventually stretching even further west into Morocco, Portugal, and Spain. Despite the political disruption,
This is important also because you see how we mentioned annexing when Islam spread, uh, and he said, and annexing most of the Middle Eastern and North African territories of, he said Byzantium, I'm going to say Roman Empire, before eventually stretching even further west into Morocco, Portugal, and Spain, right? We got to remember, when Islam spread to Egypt, and we talked about this a lot, especially when we talked about Ubadah ibn Assamit, right? The Romans was running that. The rest of North Africa, the Berber territories, the Romans was running that. Hashem, which is Palestine, Jordan, Syria, the Romans was running that. All of that. So the Battle of Mu'tah, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is fighting the Romans, right? They're in Hashem, which we look at now as the Arab lands, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and all of that. But at that time, the Romans were running that. And when the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba, like we mentioned, under the leadership of Abu Bakr and Umar ibn al-Khattab and all of them, when they were there fighting, doing jihad, they were fighting Romans. You have to keep that in mind. Just because a person is in a place fighting, that doesn't necessarily mean they are fighting the indigenous inhabitants of that place. You have to keep that in mind. It's very important. Inshallah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Bismillah. Despite the political disruption, trade continued across these areas for many centuries, later evolving with the introduction of the camel to North Africa, which allowed people to cross the previously impenetrable Sahara Desert and establish contact and trade with sub-Saharan Africa, merging the Silk Route with the new Sand Route and exposing both sides of the desert to a brand new world.
Two other points I want to mention. See, bringing up a lot of good points about the trade routes and all that kind of stuff. Like we talked about Egypt, right? In Egypt, when the Romans was running it, now they call themselves, well, they're being called Byzantians, right? When they were controlling Egypt, and they were controlling it right up until the time the Sahaba got there and took it from them, right? All of the grain and wheat that was reaching Europe was coming from Egypt. So they was taking all of their resources out of it, just like they do in Africa today. There's no difference, right? So when the Muslims conquered Egypt and took it from the Romans, that's one of many resources that stopped going to Europe. So a lot of times we'd be looking at, the people became Muslim. It was a whole lot more that happened, more than people becoming Muslim. The Muslims, cut off someone's gravy train. They dug in their pockets. Now, you can't get this no more. We got this. If you want grains and stuff and rice from here, you got to pay for it. You just ain't gonna take it like you've been taking, right? And so, it put an economic hurt on the Europeans. And I want to mention here how these places that he's mentioning, he's talking about how Islam is spreading across North Africa, even into Morocco, and now because of the camel and everything, is even penetrating south. across the Sahara, across the Sahara Desert. And there's some names you should keep in mind, right? At this time, Umar ibn al-Khattab and then Uthman ibn Affan, they're the Khalifa, right? But on the ground, you have some Sahaba who are generals, like Uqba ibn Nafi. Uqba ibn Nafi. Uqba ibn Nafi. You should remember that name. He was one of the generals, and he is reported to have rode his horse into the Atlantic Ocean. And while we're talking about these things, you should be able to visualize it in your head. In your mind, you should see a map of Africa, and you should see the Mediterranean Sea connecting with the Atlantic Ocean. And in your mind, you should see Morocco, and right underneath that, Mauritania, right? You should visualize this stuff. Well, in that area, in Morocco, he's riding his horse into the Atlantic Ocean, and he famously said, "If I knew there were lands on the other side of you, I would cross you and take you for the sake of Allah." And then early maps that were produced after this time, right? This is deep now, right? And I'm sure he's going to maybe touch on it at least further on. But in early maps that were depicted right after this time period, they have America on the map. And and these maps are Arabic maps. And on the map, it says in Arabic, Ardu Majhul, unknown territory. Like they know it's there. They don't have a name for it or etc. So these things are part of our history. These things are well known, inshallah. And also these Sahaba, they went into the Sahara Desert. And again, when they crossed the Sahara, and this is extremely important, and Sheikh Ahmadu Baba from Timbuktu, not to be confused with Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba from Senegal. But Sheikh Ahmadu Baba was an earlier scholar from the 16th century, the 1500s, of Timbuktu. Both of them have similar stories. Sheikh Ahmad Bamba and Baba, they have very similar stories. They were dealing with European colonialism and even taken as slaves and prisoners of war. But Ahmadu Baba said, and Sheikh Uthman Danfodio quoted him in his book, Bayana Wujubu Hijra, his book on political theory and practice, right? He said, quoting Sheikh Ahmadu Baba, that the Ahlu Sudan, the black people of Africa, they became Muslim and they have never been conquered by anybody. In other words, they became Muslim voluntarily. They didn't become Muslim because they were conquered. That's extremely important. There's an African scholar from the latter part of this early time period telling you that black Africans became Muslim voluntarily without being conquered by anybody. And that's a great honor. That's our history. A lot of these people who we feel humiliated and embarrassed before, or in front of, their ancestors became Muslim, a lot of them by the sword. They were conquered. They fought against Islam. Our ancestors, they became Muslim voluntarily by trade, for the most part, by trade and marriage. And these Sahaba, like Uqba ibn Nafi, he married one of the daughters of a king, and the name escapes my mind, right? But he married one of the daughters of a king, and that their child is that marriage between the Sahaba, who was from Quraysh, his name's Uqba ibn Nafi, right? And the daughter of that king, right? They form what is now known as the Fulani tribe. That's where it starts at. That's why the Fulani trace their lineage to the Quraysh. It's through Uqba ibn Nafi. And they became Muslim voluntarily. So their lineage has Sahaba in it. And that's just one route. And so this is extremely important. I haven't read further, so I don't know if he's going to cover this in detail, but I know he has to at some point touch Bismillah.
Bismillah. At that time, the preeminent power in the West African region was the Ghana Empire, which was the predecessor to Mansa Musa's Mali Empire, which was, sorry, Ghana was described by Tariqo Patash, one of the first West African texts dealing with the history of the area as follows. It is very huge and extensive region lying far west in the direction of the Atlantic Ocean. Kaya Maga was the one who founded the first empire in that area. The seat of his government was Ghana, which was a great metropolis in the country of Bagina. It is said that their kingdom was in existence before Muhammad SAW was commissioned in 610 AD. And by that time, there had already ruled some 22 kings. And after Muhammad SAW prophetic commission, there ruled 22 kings. Thus, the total number of their kings were 44 kings. The Ghana described in the above extract shouldn't be confused with the modern day Ghana, which was known as the Gold Coast until it was renamed in homage to ancient Ghana upon receiving the independence from British colonial rule, with the hope that the new nation will be just as prosperous. Ancient Ghana, however, was situated in modern day Mali and Mauritania, bordering the rival Takrour Empire in modern day northern Senegal. And these two nations are where the story of Islam begins in West Africa. Ghana was known for its vast gold reserves and plentiful mines, which attracted Berber and Arab traders from North Africa, who exchanged the valuable metal for European weapons and silks, along with brocades and spices from the East. This trade of goods also brought an influx of novel lifestyles, as Muslims from the north began to settle in the Ghana Empire. The natives would quickly come to view the new faith in Arabic language as a doorway to the newly discovered and rapidly globalizing wider world. Much of what we know about Ghana's socio-political environment is due to the written observations of those scholars and travelers. The earliest reference we have of Ghana was from the Arabian scholar Al-Fazari, who wrote about Ghana between 1815 to 1828, referring to it as Ghana, the land of gold, and detailing the geographical dimensions of the kingdom. Then, around 200 years later, we see another lengthier mention of the empire in the Book of Roads and Kingdoms, Kitab al-Masalik wal Mamalik, which was written in 1068, based on literature and the reports of merchants and travelers who traversed the sand roads of the Sahara. A brief look at this description of the Ghana Empire offers us an interesting overview of the religion, society, and politics of 11th century West Africa. Al-Bakri
And
gives
I hope that you're really paying attention because this history is extremely important, especially when people try to tell you that Arabs or Muslims or Arab Muslims conquered the Africans and forced Islam on them. Understanding this history that he's breaking down for us right now is extremely important. Extremely important. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Kali Khadija and Jackie Hassan, and anyone else who I might have missed. Antoine Mohammed, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam.
Bismillah. Al-Bakri gives us this account of Ghana in the year 460 AH, which is equivalent to 1068 in the Gregorian calendar. Their king today, namely in the year 460, is Tunka Manen. He ascended the throne in 455. The name of his predecessor was Basi, and he became their ruler at the age of 85. He led a praiseworthy life on account of his love of justice and friendship for the Muslims. Basi was a maternal uncle of Tunka Manen. This is their custom and their habit, that the kingship is inherited only by the son of the king's sister. He has no doubt that his successor is a son of his sister. While he is not certain that his son is in fact his own, and he is not convinced of the genuineness of his relationship to him, this Tunka Manon is powerful, rules an enormous kingdom, and possesses great authority. The city of Ghana consists of two towns situated on a plain. One of these towns, which is inhabited by Muslims, is large and possesses 12 mosques, in one of which they assemble for the Friday prayer. There are salaried imams and muazzins, as well as jurists and scholars. In the environs are wells with sweet water, from which they drink and with which they grow vegetables. The king's town is 6 miles distant from this one and bears the name of Al Gaba. Between these two towns, there are continuous habitations. The houses of the inhabitants are of stone and acacia wood. The king has a palace and a number of domed dwellings, all surrounded with an enclosure like a city wall. In the king's town, and not far from his court of justice, is a mosque where the Muslims who arrive at his court pray. Around the king's town are domed buildings and groves and thickets where the sorcerers of these people, men in charge of the religious cult, live. In them, too, are their idols and tombs of their kings. These woods are guarded, and none may enter them, and know what is there. In them also are the king's prisons. If somebody is in prison, there's no news of him is ever heard. The king's interpreters, the official in charge of his treasurer, and the majority of his ministers are Muslims. Among the people who follow
So
the
just
king's religion,
keep in mind, he's talking about the ancient of Ghana. He's talking about this non-Muslim king and the non-Muslim environments. But you see, all of the key people and officials in in the kingdom are Muslim. So just keep that in mind, inshallah.
Bismillah. Among the people who follow the king's religion, only he and his heir apparent, who is the son of his sister, may wear sewn clothes. All other people wear robes of cotton, silk, or brocade, according to their means. All of them shave their heads, and women shave their heads. The king adorns himself like a woman, wearing necklaces around his neck and bracelets on his forearm. And he puts on a high cap decorated with gold and wrapped in a turban of fine cotton. He sits in audience or to hear grievances against officials in a domed pavilion around which stands 10 horses covered with gold embroidered materials. Behind the king stand 10 pages holding shields and swords decorated with gold. And on his right are the sons of the vassal kings of his country wearing splendid garments and their hair plaited with gold. The government of the city sits on the ground before the king, and around him are ministers seated likewise. When people who profess the same religion as the king approach him, they fall on their knees and sprinkle dust on their heads, for this is their way of greeting him. As for the Muslims, they greet him only by clapping their hands. On every donkey load of salt, when it is brought into the country, their king levies 1 golden dinar, and 2 dinars when it is sent out. From a load of copper, the king's due is 5 mithqals, and from a load of other goods, 10 mithqals. The best gold found in his land comes from the town of Giaru, which is 18 days traveling distance from the king's town over a country inhabited by tribes of the black whose dwellings are continuous. The nuggets found in all the mines of his country are reserved for the king, only his gold dust being left for the people. But for this, the people would accumulate gold until it has lost its value. The nugget may weigh from an ounce to a pound. It is related that the king owns a nugget as large as a big stone. The king of Ghana, when he calls up his army, can put 200,000 men into the field, and more than 40,000 of them archers. This abstract grants us three major interesting insights into the West African society of 1,000 years ago. Firstly, West Africa was very wealthy and prosperous, with a deeply sophisticated society and culture. The image of West Africans dressed in cotton, silk, and brocade, living in houses of stone and acacia wood, with a highly organized governmental system and military is a far cry from the image of half-naked primitive natives living in mud huts that was perpetrated by the Western world. Secondly, we can see that Islam was well established in West African society, and notably for a very long time. In the reign of this king, his capital city had 12 mosques with salaried imams and muadhin, jurists, and scholars. Clearly, Islam was not new to West Africa by this time and was firmly established within the heart of, of the Ghana Empire. Finally, Islam was never imposed on the people of Ghana, but rather they came to the faith of their own accord and peaceful existed alongside the practitioners of traditional African religions. Clearly, the king himself was not Muslim, yet his interpreters, the officials in charge of his treasury, and the majority of his ministers were. This account also goes against the popular Orientalist narratives of Islam being spread by the sword, especially the West African region. There are no historically accurate narratives of Arabs invading and imposing their religion on West Africans. But rather, it is evident that West Africans themselves decided to enter the religion and coexist among the practitioners of traditional belief without even imposing their practices on the other. In further illustration of this reality, al-Bakri also provides us an example of how Islam spread in West Africa through his description of what he describes as the Malal kingdom, whom many believe to be the mispronunciation of Mali, and the precursor to the empire later founded by Sundiata Keita and brought fame by Mansa
Sanjata
Musa.
Keita. Sanjata Keita.
Sunjata Keita,
That's how you pronounce it.
Sunjata Keita, and brought fame by Mansa Musa. El-Bakri narrates, beyond this country lies another called Malal, the king of which is known as Al-Musulmani, the Muslim. He is thus called because his country became afflicted with the drought one year following another. The inhabitants prayed for rain, sacrificing cattle till they had exterminated almost all of them. But the drought and the misery only increased. The king had as his guest a Muslim who used to read the Quran and was acquainted with the Sunnah. To this man, the king complained of the calamities that assailed him and his people. The man said, O king, if you believed in God, who is exalted, and testified that he is one, and testified as to the prophetic mission of Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, and if you accept all the religious laws of Islam, I would pray for your deliverance from your plight, and that God's mercy would envelop all the people of your country, and that your enemies and adversaries might envy you on that account. Thus, he continued to press the king until the latter accepted Islam and became a sincere Muslim. The man made him recite from the Quran some easy passages and taught him religious obligations and practices which no way may be excused from knowing. Then the Muslim made him wait till the eve of the following Friday, when he ordered him to purify himself by a complete ablution and clothed him in a cotton garment which he had. The two of them came out towards a mound of earth, and there the Muslim stood praying while the king standing at his right side imitated him. Thus they prayed for a part of the night. The Muslim recited invocations and the king saying, Amin. The dawn had just started to break when God caused abundant rain to descend upon them. So the king ordered the idols to be broken and expelled the sorcerers from his country. He and his descendants after him, as well as his nobles, were sincerely attached to Islam, while the common people of his kingdom remained polytheists. Since then, their rulers have been given the title Al-Musulmani.
See, look at this. You see, you can tell he was one of the awliya, and subhanallah, one of the protective friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it just reminded me, because maybe about an hour ago, like maybe about 2 hours ago, I was catching up and I was listening to Imam Amin's class that he had this morning. And he was talking about have confidence in Allah. He was talking about Prophet Ibrahim, and and he talked about when he was being thrown into the fire, and Allah sent an angel to him, and the angel said, "Do you have any need?" You like, "From you?" No. Allah got me, right? Confidence, right? And you see this wali of Allah, confidence. He was confident. He was like, I could pray. I don't know if it's going to happen, no. But no, he was like, no. If you do this, if you did that, and if you believe this, I'll pray for you, and you can have rain. He was confident, right? And it happened. And this is one of the gifts of the awliya. They bring barakah with them. They don't bring division and fighting and stuff like that. They bring barakah with them, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them that they don't have no fear, nor shall they grieve. And so you see how this particular king, he was open to it, and he followed the Muslims, he followed the instructions, and by means of this awliya, this wali of Allah, this king became Muslim, destroyed the idols, and basically turned this kingdom into a Muslim kingdom, the kingdom of Mali. Subhanallah, right? And Islamically, and a lot of people don't know this. Islamically, if the ruler is Muslim, the land is considered a Muslim land, right? That's the general rule. It doesn't matter how many percentage of the people is Muslim or not. If the ruler is Muslim, the land is the land of Islam. But unless, and of course, this Muslim ruler nullifies it by legalizing things that go against the Sharia and stuff like that. Of course, we're not talking about that. But the general rule is, ruler is Muslim, the land is an Islamic land. Ruler not Muslim, the land is not an Islamic land. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Go ahead.
Bismillah. We have similar story regarding the king of the neighboring kingdom of Takrur in northern Senegal, whose king, Wajabi, converted to Islam in the early thousands and enforced Sharia law in his kingdom, turning it into West Africa's first Islamic state. It is from this kingdom that the clerical Tukulor Fulani class emerged, who also played a major role in spreading Islam throughout the region. We can see then that the driving force behind the spread of Islam in early Africa was not jihad, Arab imperialism, or forced conversion, but rather the peaceful interaction of West African elites with Arab and Berber traders and scholars. Islamic scholar and emperor Uthman Ben Fodio, may Allah and His mercy, Ameen, stated when asked about how Islam entered sub-Saharan Africa, if you ask whether the Muslims among the people of the blacks accepted Islam through being conquered or whether they professed it voluntarily, I will say that the answer to this is as stated by Sheikh Ahmed Baba in his CASHAPP, when he said they accepted Islam without being conquered by anybody. In another place, he said, it appears from what Ibn Khaldun and others said that those who became Muslims from among the blacks did so voluntarily without being conquered by anybody. All of these narratives
I didn't even know he was going to quote him, right? But the book that he's quoting from, we mentioned, is Bayana Wujubu Hijra ala Ibad, the obligation of making hijra upon the servants, written by Sheikh Uthman Ben Fodio. And it's in the very beginning of the book, sort of like in the introduction, where he mentions this. So, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Bismillah. All of these narratives paint a picture of how Islam entered West Africa. But how did Islam spread and become the predominant religion in the region? If the traders were the ones who brought the religion in, the kings and nobility were the ones who established its presence in the region and served as its patrons. Following these two groups, it is the clerical class that developed and devoted themselves to teaching and proselytizing across the region. They are the ones who truly changed the trajectory of the spread of the new faith. Want me to continue?
Mm-hmm.
Bismillah. The hoe, the tablet, and the rosary. Clerical lineages and the spread of Islam. After the introduction of Islam to West Africa, the spread of Islamic education and practice became widespread, with native Africans adopting the faith. A new generation of born African Muslims emerged and developed into a community of different clan groups who devoted themselves to the study and practice of their new faith. West African society already divided people into castes, a system of dividing the community into different groups based on occupation and social standing. With the spread of Islam and the increasing prestige given to Islamic learning, a new caste of families developed, known for their mastery of the Quran and Islamic sciences. They served practitioners of the faith, providing religious services as imam, qadi, and Quran teachers. They also provided faith healing and medical services, possibly a syncretic practice that relied on the knowledge that they had gained from the medical texts and mystical traditions of the Arab world combined with the traditional knowledge they had inherited from their ancestors. In the Ghana Empire, which was a kingdom controlled by the Soninke ethnic group, this trend gave rise to the Jahanki caste amongst the Soninke and the Guyula caste amongst the wider Mande Mandinka speaking people. These were groups of families who had gathered together to devote themselves to the study and teaching of the Islamic sciences. Based on the trade route born access they had to the scholarly circles of Fez, Marrakesh, and Morocco, Harawan, and Tunisia, and Cairo, and Egypt, they soon developed a detailed Islamic studies curriculum focused on the Maliki school of law and the Ashari school of Aqidah, or religious creed. They then started to
Pause
move
right
out
there.
of the capital cities.
Pause right there. Uh, I just wanted to mention that I was looking at. I saw Imadi's statement. Uh, she said, "I didn't know it was the dominant religion in the region." Oh yeah, oh yeah. Even right now, where I'm sitting, Gambia, this is like not no less than 95% Muslim. Senegal, same thing. Most of North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, right, has populations, every country, of over 90% Muslim, right? Even Ghana, well, I forgot what their percentage is, like something like 89, 85, or something like that. You know, now it seems like Gambia is the hot spot where people want to come to, but I know years ago, and 5 and 10 and 20, 30 years ago, Ghana was the hot spot. Ghana, well over 80% Muslim. And right, so, if you look at a map of Africa based upon, you know, uh, the religious practitioners, you find that basically Africa is the Muslim continent. Even in those places where Islam is not dominant, like it is here, where we're at right now, it still has a sizable presence, a sizable population, right? Yes, Abdullah Isa is mentioning a whole lot of countries. We can go on and on and on. Even Ethiopia, in East Africa, and Eritrea, all of these places. Uh, big, huge Muslim population. And one other thing I wanted to mention. The last sentence you read said that this curriculum that developed, Maliki School of Law and Ashari School of Aqidah or Creed, that's for the most part our religious, history. That's what we come from, right? That's our history. So when you come to Africa, for the most part, there's exceptions to every rule, right? But when you come to Africa, right, and you see all of these Muslims, and you go to certain places, and you see that they're really not Malik or they're not Ashari, you may find that they're Wahhabi. You have to understand that it's the same thing that we're afflicted with in America. Like they actually, a lot of places, they give you financial incentives. Like even some places, right? Tell you how bad it is. Some places, if you go and pray in their masjid, they give you money just for going to pray in their masjid. Because now because of colonialism, neo-colonialism, and the rape of the resources that's taking place on the African continent, right? Poverty is a real thing. So a lot of people do some real strange things for some change, right? And so it don't stop. Like, they, they, they want to see with us, a lot of African Americans, they they hide our history from us. They don't teach it to us. We don't even know it's there. But the ones who are here on the continent, right, they they try to bribe them out of their history and get them to forget about it, right? So, like, believe it or not, you got a lot of Qadianis here. What's a Qadiani? Y'all may know him as Ahmadiyya. They believe in Mirza Ghulam Ahmed being a prophet after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an Indian false prophet in Africa. They tell me, and I heard it more than once, that sometimes if you go to their masjids, they'll pay you for going to make salat there. They give you some money. Sometimes they give you financial incentives to go, study in Saudi, be a Wahhabi, because they get support, just like they did in the when I say early days, the 80s and the 90s in America. You know, they only accepting students, below 24 years of age, and they pay for the schooling and everything like that. And then they come back and they come all over Europe and America, and they finance them, they make them imams and all that kind of stuff, and they spread that stuff in our country. They're doing the same thing here. It's just more blatant here. Other things that you see here a lot, how like if you go to the hood in America, right, you're going to see bodegas, gas stations, nail shops, weave shops, and you can tell what people is spending their money on in the hood. Here, the type of store you're going to see more than any type of store is Western Union and MoneyGram and all of those other countless ways to send money. Why? Because most people here ain't really making no money. The money that's cut, the money that people are surviving off of here is money that their families who made it to America, Europe, Canada, Australia, and these other places, and Asia, their family who made it to all of these other places, and they go there and work and get jobs, when they send money back, that's how they live. Not because the economy is built up here. The economy is broken in most of these places. So the money is coming in from the inside, coming in here from the outside. So this is what I see as an outsider when I come. Every other store, MoneyGram, Western Union, RIA, and all the other dozen money transfer systems that you can use to send money. How is it that every other store can be a money transfer system and all of them make money? Because that's the reality. And so when you find that the economy is broken like this, right? A lot of people do anything for money. Anything for money. Some embarrassing, disgusting things for money. And that's one of the reasons why we started doing tours. Like our first tour is coming up in June, and a lot of you will be on it with us. Well, alhamdulillah. It's only going to be the first. But we want to do like what Malcolm said. We have to build new bridges between us in America and in the West and our people back here. We need to help our own. They have some things that we need, and we have some things that they need, right? And if we come together without arrogance or thinking that we're better than the other, we could do a lot of good things together, right? But most of the other people who interact here, they're only here for exploitation. I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I just wanted to mention, you mentioned you read here about the Maliki school and the Ashari school. That's our history and our tradition. Say it again.
I say you're not sorry.
What'd you say?
I'm just messing.
I'm not sorry? Or you try to make a joke?
Yeah.
See, when you make a joke, the network ain't no good here. The network the network ain't no good. So if you're going to tell a joke, number one, you have to preface it by saying it's a joke. And then you have to say it slow so I can catch it just in case it break in and go in and out. And then when you end it, you have to remind me that it's a joke, so I can know it's a joke.
Subhanallah. Bismillah. They
I'm
then
sorry. Go
started to
ahead.
move out. Huh? What do you say? Oh, that's that network. Bismillah.
I
They
say you
then
can go
start.
ahead.
Oh, okay. Bismillah. They then started to move out of the capital cities, which were the centers of political authority, to form their own towns and villages in the countryside, based on the application of a self-subsistent Islamic lifestyle and a life revolving around three main pillars: al-Qiyara, study; al-Harth, farming; and al-Safa, travel. When it came to study, their primary focus was the mastery of the Arabic alphabet and the memorization of the Quran. This also served as an organic means of spreading Islam, as many non Muslims would send their children to study in these Quranic schools in order to expose them to the Arabic language, in hopes that it would open up doors of opportunity for them in trade or skilled labor. Farming
Stop
aimed.
right there. This is still very important, right? And in a lot of cases, it still goes on. A lot of the languages spoken on the continent are a lot of time still verbal or oral traditions like that. We were talking about this. I think Emad is still here. We were talking about this before the other day. He's here too, right? We were talking about how like sometimes you may come to a place, right? They haven't even standardized the language, right? So you may find the same word spelled a million different ways because they just spelling it in English or whatever language, right? Whatever European language, they just spelling it how it sounds. So you may see the same word spelled a million different ways, right? Because the language they ain't really written like that. But during these times, the Arabic, I mean, the language when it was written in Arabic, and you call that Ajami. When you write another language using the Arabic script, that's called Ajami. And so what he's saying here is that when Islam came here, the Arabic was used. The Arabic was a tool to gain literacy and to gain a skill and to basically build, upgrade your life. When the European colonial powers took over the Muslim world and started breaking these societies, the first thing they did was they tried to replace the Ajami, or to get rid of the Arabic script and introduce the European or Roman script. That's not done by accident. When you do that, you're breaking them from their tradition. You're not only cutting them off from the Arabic language, you're cutting them off literally from their own language because they were writing their own language in the Arabic language. This is extremely, extremely important. And the fact that their own languages back then were written using the Arabic script, if they decided to become, proficient in Islam or become scholars, learning Arabic was nothing because they already was using the Arabic to read and write their own language. So you have to keep this in mind. All of this, a lot of this stuff, people don't talk about it a lot, but it was systematically broken during the colonial period.
Sound like what they did, sound just exactly what they did here in America when they kidnapped us. They did not allow us to speak our original languages. Used to put muzzles on us. Used to punish us. Didn't allow us to read or write. It was a crime to read and write. So this it's the same thing, same practice. Um, Bismillah. Um, Bismillah. Farming aimed to provide them with self-subsistent food sources, which help ensure their autonomy and freedom from political authority and the likely compromises relationship with them entail. Trade provided them with a means of not only increasing their wealth, but also offer them the opportunity to expand the community and spread Islam in other localities. The Dayula caste was particularly known for this, as the word Dayula itself means trade. And so these clerics would travel and offer not only their goods and services, but also their Islamic knowledge and beliefs. Ep-
I wanted to say something earlier. It may be a little bit off the subject, but we have to think about this. Like, in order to really come up economically, it's one thing to get close to the source. In other words, whatever you're selling, right? Uh, the more the more you can get directly to the source or yourself become the source, the more profit you get, the more money you get. So whatever you're selling, if you can become the producer, you the man. So if you start producing whatever you're selling, right, and then you start uh, trans uh, transporting what you're selling, and then you the one that's selling it, you get your money all the way around. And because this theme just kept popping up in my mind because he kept talking about how the Muslims control the trade route, right? And a lot of times we have to be mindful of this, right? That even when we go into business, or even if we're in the business, quote unquote, of giving information or teaching, right? You also have to make it your business to work towards controlling the trade route. In other words, how is your goods going to get to the market, right? I mean, just think about it. Look at Amazon. I remember Amazon was, you know, you ordered something, right? You know, they had to use the transportation that was available, the USPS, UPS, FedEx, or whatever, right? Jeff Bezos understand in order to really control the market, I gotta control how my stuff gets to the market. So now they created their own transportation system. If they want to, they have the infrastructure to take over all of the delivery in the country and not miss a beat. They can literally take over UPS and FedEx right now. They got all the same tools and even better tools in their distribution centers to sort mail, sort boxes, and all that kind of stuff. So not only are uh, they getting, not only are they selling stuff, but they now have assumed control of getting their own products to the market by themselves. And that's why, I mean, if you think about it, if you think about business like this, and then think about drug dealers in the United States, if you think about it like this, a black drug dealer can never reach the top of the food chain. Why? Because he don't live in the place where the drugs are being produced, right? So there's always going to be somebody that is in production. They're not going to let him in, right? Because it's controlled by cartels, family, tribes, to put it another way, right? So they're not just going to let you, you know, okay, how much money you got? You're going to take a plane, go south of the border, and say, hey, man, listen, man, I want to buy out this cartel thing. I want to go into production for myself. It ain't going to happen, right? So you're never going to be in charge of production, right? And then they have various networks of getting the stuff, the drugs, to the market, to the United States. A lot of people say it's the government themselves, right? Right? Transporting the stuff in military planes or underground tunnels or mules and stuff. You're not even controlling that. So even when you think about the illegal drug trade, the black dude is going to always be in the bottom in that position. He can't rise up. Even though if you compare him to other people like him, he may look like the man or the kingpin, but he's really nowhere near no kingpin. He can never be on top of the food chain because of his location and his lineage. He can't. He's gonna always be at the bottom. And like as we all know, when they decide to crack down on it, they always crack down on the people on the bottom. Right? So we should keep this things in mind when we're or in business, or even like now we're teaching, online, right? We're not in charge of these platforms. Even we pay the month the subscription fee and all that stuff. We're not in charge of it. They can create some new law and say what you're teaching violates the policy. We shutting your channel down. Ha! Right? We don't control. And so that's just something that just it crossed my mind about 3 pages ago, and it just crossed my mind again. And we should really think about this, whether we are in business buying and selling stuff, or even as teachers and trying to preserve and transmit our deen. We should keep this in mind and move accordingly, inshallah.
Bismillah. Edwin Blyden describes the process as follows in his book, Islam, Christianity, and the Negro Race. The pagan village possessing a Muslim teacher is always found to be in advance of its neighbors in all elements of civilization. The people pay great deference to him. He instructs their children. The Mohammedan, then, who enters a pagan village with his books and papers and rosaries, his frequent ablutions and regularly recurring times of prayers and prostration, in which he appears to be conversing with some invisible being, soon acquires a controlling influence over the people. He secures their moral confidence and respect, and they bring to him all their difficulties for solution and all their grievances for redress.
And it's still like that. Go ahead.
One of the most notable scholars of this cultural moment, and one to whom most modern day Jahankis and Duilas trace their intellectual lineage, was El Haj Salim Suwair, who was said to be who was said to have codified the moral code of Duyala Jahanke and united them all into one movement. One Jahanke scholar remarks, our ancestor Al-Haj Suwair brought together all the lineages, Ansab, among them the Silla, the Suwair, the Darami, Jacobi, Gassama, Sise, Kaba, Fadiga, Torre, Ofana, and others. It was these families who were largely responsible for the Islamic expansion in Mali, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Burkina Faso, the Gambia, the two Guineas, and even as far as afield as Nigeria. Al-Haj Salim's approach was significant, as he completely diverged from the North African interpretation of Islam championed by movements such as the Almoravid and the Omahad. Rather, let me read the footnote. These movements call for armed struggle, jihad, against those who refuse to submit themselves to the Islamic faith. Sound like Al Qaeda or somebody, right?
So these are uh, Al-Muravid. These are Romanized names for Al-Murabitun.
Mm,
Murabitun is people of the Ribat. And that's a whole movement. I don't know if he's going to touch on that in there. I thought he was going to touch on it when he was talking about the Ghana Empire and talking about the Mali Empire, right? But maybe he'll get back to it later. But when you see Al-Muravid, that's
mm,
Al-Murabitun in Arabic.
mm,
And Al-Murabitun, they are the ones who you hear about the most, even though they originate in Africa. You hear about them going to Spain, Al-Andalus,
mm,
Muslim Spain, on more than one occasion, and stopping the fitna between the petty kings in Spain and bringing, reviving Islam there, right? You hear about them. And the Al-Muwahids, they are like pre-Wahhabi
mm,
Wahhabis. I say
mm.
pre-Wahhabi,
Yeah.
pre 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 Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab,
Mm,
because how did they say it? Al Muwahids. That's a romanization as Al Muwahidun.
mm,
In other words, the people of Tawheed.
mm,
And so they came and like toppled the Murabi tune and stuff like that. So there's history there. I don't know if he's really going to touch on it. A lot of times you can't touch on everything because you're trying to focus on, blackness and Islam, and so he may
right.
not go into these areas, but it's extremely important. But nevertheless, these movements were black movements, black Islamic movements, and they started in Africa, but they had a major impact in Al Andalus in Spain and other places. Go ahead.
Bismillah. Rather, he preached that the scholarly classes should peacefully coexist with non-Muslims and not make any overt efforts to proselytize. He advocated that they instead provide knowledge and service to them as a means of spreading the faith. Suwarian method for this peaceful coexistence was based on seven foundational principles. One, unbelievers are ignorant, not wicked. Two, it is Allah's decree that some people remain ignorant longer than others. Three, Muslims must nurture their own learning and piety, not only for their own benefit, but so that they can be good role models to non-Muslims and serve as a model to follow. Four, they could accept the jurisdiction of non-Muslim authorities as long as they have the necessary protection and conditions to practice the faith in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Five, the military jihad was a resort only in self-defense if the faithful were threatened. Six, Suwari discouraged active dawah, instead contending that Allah will bring non-Muslims to Islam in his own way through peaceful interaction with non-Muslims and providing service to their communities. One could expose them to the teachings of Islam. Seven, Muslims must ensure that by their commitment to education and learning, they keep their observance of the law free from error.
And personally, I agree with all of this, right? In other words, and I've always said it that a lot of times when people say dawah, in my mind, this is just me and my way of expressing it. I think they more have in their mind somewhere like Jehovah Witness. We're going to knock on your door. We're going to give you a book. We're going to give you a pamphlet. And I think when a lot of people think dawah, that's what they think in their mind. Me, I've always had the opinion that dawah, inviting people to Islam, is more effective by you being a good person and a good Muslim and not closing yourself off from people, but interacting with the people based upon your Islamic principles and not compromising it, not being overbearing, just being you, a Muslim, right? And I think things come naturally when you do this. You know, especially you live where we live, a lot of stuff we're going to do is strange. People going to question us about it. And now you have an opportunity to explain why you're doing what you do. Why are you wearing them funny baggy clothes? You know, why you gotta pray so much? Can't you just pray? Or no? You know, all of these things, you know, there's gonna be plenty opportunities to explain Islam. But like he said, proselytize, you know, I'm not saying this, don't miss what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I believe it's haram or anything like that. I'm just saying I think historically and from my own experience as well as most people that I know who have embraced Islam, it wasn't necessarily an intellectual or somebody came at them real hard. They just casually observed someone and hey, I want whatever that person got, I want that. You know what I mean? And I know everybody's situation is different. That's why I said I agree with what his position as far as da'wah. And in Islam, you call this khidmah when you provide service to people. You know, just provide service to the people. Like he mentioned examples like in the ancient kingdom of Ghana, where all the key officials were Muslim, and they were the treasurers. They were doing all of this. So you doing this based upon Islamic principles. You're not cheating people. You're easy to deal with. You're going to get justice when you come to them. That's going to invite people to Islam anyway. Just being a good person. And they say, man, all y'all Muslims is good people, man. How can I get down? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. We're going to keep reading up till we get into the next subchapter on page 83. So
okay,
just finish reading that section.
Bismillah. This method proved to be highly successful, and most Muslim communities in West Africa today can trace their practice to Duyala and Jahanki scholars and their interventions in the various communities that dot the region. For example, in Nigeria, which has over 100 million Muslims, we have the city of Kano, described as the intellectual and cultural capital of the North, and was one of the most prominent seats of Islamic scholarship and authority. The Kano Chronicle, which is an Arabic text that documents the history of the thousand-year-old kingdom, provides a list of kings stretching back to the 10th century AD. When we reach the story of the 11th king, Yaji, who ruled from 1359 to 1385 CE, we see it is noted that in Yaji's time, the Wangara Diolas came from Mali, bringing the Mohammedan religion. The name of their leader was Abdurrahman Zayti and others, about 40 in all. When they came, they commanded the Sarki, king, to observe the times of prayer. He complied and made Gardamus his liman, imam, and Laol his muazzin, caller to prayer. Alta cut the throats of whatever flesh was eaten to enter the meat, to ensure that the meat was halal. Madawali was the liman, imam of the Mongarara, of the chief of the men of Kano. Zayti was their alkali, judge. The Sarki, king, commanded every town in Kano country to observe their times of prayer. So they all did so. A mosque was built beneath the sacred tree facing east, and prayers were made at the five appointed times in it. Similar patterns were involved in the spread of Islam to the Yoruba people in the southwest, where Islam is called Essen Imam, or the religion of Mali, and was introduced to them around the same time by this same caste of traders. They soon made inroads by converting many local chiefs and traditional kings to Islam, guaranteeing Islam permanency and faster rates of conversion. And the effects of this can be seen in almost every country in West Africa.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. So we're going to stop there today. I see some people make comments. Can you go back up as far as you can and read some of the comments, see if there's any questions there as well?
Okay, hold on, let's see here.
What time is it there for
Callie
y'all?
Khadija said the operative word here, I'm just going back. Salaried imams. This is why we need to make sure that we take care of our leaders. That was
Yeah, and
before
she said that
Imar's comment.
she, she made that comment, and the imams were salaried, and the king wasn't even Muslim. Look at that, because that was I seen she made that comment when we was reading about uh, the Kingdom of Ghana, and this is good that we're learning our history because we some weird Islam, it's weird. African Americans, it's kind of weird because some things you can say, okay, we get it from the Christians, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's one thing that miraculously we didn't get from the Christians, right? Like the Christians, they take care of the pastors of their reverends. Like they think they're doing something wrong if the pastor don't. I don't know what's the hottest car now, but when I was young growing up, the Cadillac, the Mercedes. Now it's the Lexus and whatever. I don't know what else. I don't know what the pastors are driving now. Bentleys. I don't know what they're driving, right? But whatever's the hot car, right? Rev had one, right? But in African American Muslim communities, if the imam pull up with anything halfly remotely close to a luxury vehicle, he get the money to do that. Like it's like suspicious. Like I don't know about him, right? He might even be, and most of us got to work, right? You know he got a job. You like, I don't know. Digging in the Sudoku box, right? Right? It's weird. Like we get everything from everything. We imitate them in everything else, but we didn't imitate them in that, right?
Imam, look, he said, "You're not getting no salary, Imam Genius. That ship has sailed in the Black Muslim community.
That ship has sailed and sunk.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Like the Titanic. Subhanallah.
Yeah.
So this, we covering this information. We have to question the information we get when we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, because they try to make it like it wasn't Muslims that they kidnapped, like they weren't majority Muslim. And what we're reading here, where they were taken from, was a majority of Muslims. So how did how they're not Muslim, but yet they come from an area that was majority of Muslims? Help me understand that. Make that make sense to me, Imam.
I always say this. I always give the example. Wherever you live, take the hood, right? This is what they do to us when they talk about slavery and the percentage of Muslims. This is what I hear, right? Take any hood, like in Pittsburgh, what the hoods is like Homewood, Garfield, the Hill District, even some of the, especially the last two I just mentioned, half of them has been gentrified, but they still got pockets of hood there, right? Northview Heights, right? These are hoods in Pittsburgh. Imagine that you heard on the news that 100 people were kidnapped from one of these hoods, and just replace the name with any hood wherever you live at, right? Where it's almost all black people. They say 100 people have been kidnapped from this hood, residents. And then some weeks go by, and then you tune into the news again, and they say, oh, the kidnapped victims have been found, and they're reporting on it. And then they say, of the 100 people that were kidnapped, 12% of them were black. And you being from the city, your mind is going to be like, wait a minute, hold up. You mean to tell me that the kidnapping happened in Homewood or New York City? The kidnapping
East New York
happened in
somewhere.
45, East New York, Brownsville. The kidnap happened in there, y'all said. And the people were residents of those places. And you said 100 people were kidnapped. And you said 12% of them were black. You're going to be like, no, something ain't adding up. I always say, what did the kidnappers do? Did they take a poll before they kidnap people? Hey, listen, we try to kidnap people, but we don't really want to kidnap black people. We trying to kidnap, non-black people, right? So, get in the van, but if you black, we don't really want you, right? You got the numbers is off. So it's the same thing. In the book, the Black Book, the True Political Philosophy of Malcolm X, written by Yusuf Naim Clyde, who was the head of the OAAU, the Organization of African American Unity, one of the organizations that Malcolm created. He was the head of the Canadian branch. He used to follow Malcolm around a lot and ask him a lot of questions. And so he put together this small book dealing with his true political philosophy. And he asked, in that book, he mentions that he asked Malcolm a question. He said, I'm paraphrasing it because I don't remember word for word, but he says, where did the majority of the slaves come from? And he said that Malcolm responded by saying, the majority of the slaves come from, according to German anthropologists and others, that they came from places, and he said that they didn't have nation states like we have now, but they came from the ancient kingdoms of Ghana, we just talked about, right? That's where they came. And if you look at the time period that the slave trade was popping off, these places were already Muslims for at least a minimum of 500 years. And the percentage of Muslims living in these places has not changed from then till now. And like I told you, I'm sitting in Gambia right now, right, which is part of the Mali Empire, right? 95% Muslim. Senegal, same thing. Mali, same thing, right? So how do you kidnap and enslave black people from places that got over 90% Muslim, and then 100 years later you come back and say, well, all the slaves that were kidnapped, right, is on the high end, 22% were Muslim. All right, man, whatever. So when you say that, that's what always runs through my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like you went to the hood that's 99% black and kidnapped a whole bunch of people, and less than half of them were black. Would you went and filled out you handed out kidnapping applications? No blacks allowed? Or in the case of slavery, get into the bottom of this boat. No Muslims allowed? No.
Subhanallah. Alhamdulillah. Well, thank you for that commentary, Imam Naeem. And we'll
Were there any
return
more
back.
comments or questions?
Just a comment. We don't imitate them and take care of our imams. Abdullah said that, but nothing else. I forgot today is Thursday. There isn't any class tomorrow. Class will resume on Monday. Well, it may not be Monday because Monday might be the Eid. We sight the moon here in Pittsburgh on Sunday evening after sunset, inshallah, depending on whether we see the moon or not. We will hold our Eid celebration on Monday. And if we do not observe the Hilal, the new moon, on Sunday, coming out, our Eid celebration will be on Tuesday. So either the May 2nd will be Eid or May 3rd will be our Eid. And just a reminder, Zakatul Fitr needs to be paid before the Eid prayer for each family, each person in a family. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say two things. In Gambia, we're on the same calendar with you all here. And if you hear anything different, the reason why you're hearing something different is the same reason why you hear something different in America, right? Because here, right, you got a whole bunch of people who want to follow Saudi too, right? And here it's funny because, what day did we start fasting? Sunday?
Sunday.
Right. So the people in Gambia started fasting Sunday too. The only people that started fasting Saturday were people who follow Saudi. And sometimes, and they do the same thing. It's confusion here, like in America, right? Like, for example, here, I forgot the name of the place, right? But someone said, oh, we saw the moon in Gambia. And they named a village where it was seen at. And you call a village, like, we ain't seen no moon here. We just following Saudi, right?
When I was there last month, when I was there last month, I was there for the beginning of Ramadan, and I was scouring the internet. I was scouring, social media, because last year when I was there for Ramadan, there was a council of imams that came together that was going to sight the moon, which they did last year. They made the announcement. They made an announcement for the beginning of Ramadan, and they made an announcement for the end of Ramadan. But this year, I went to their website. It was dormant since last year when I was here last year. So I don't know what's going on. So I'm like, is somebody going to sight the moon or what? Me and my son had to go out on the roof and look for the halal, in which we didn't see it. So alhamdulillah, I said, we're not fasting tomorrow. This 29 days, we're going to do 30 and, keep it moving.
And you were right, because, you in the main areas, like the areas where we live and stuff like that, a lot of them is the Wahhabi influence. But, off in the cut, right? Away, back in where people still really practice a traditional Islam, they all started fasting Sunday. They all sight the moon just like we do, right? And they ain't going for that stuff, right? what I was going to say, the situation in Gambia, it reminds me back in the day, because I used to be a DJ in the Jahiliyyah, right? And in the old days, when if you want to prove yourself, you need to battle someone, just like MC and rapping and battling. Same thing with DJs. Back then, beatboxing and all that, same thing, right? Break dancing and popping, all battle, right? What DJs, right? You can be a nice DJ, but if your system is whack, meaning you ain't got a powerful amp or your speakers is trash, you can be a nice and do all the tricks you want, but ain't nobody going to hear you if your competition, all he got to do is turn up his volume and drown you out, right? And so it's the same thing here, right? Because they have at least two bodies of scholars indigenous here to Gambia. One is Wahhabi and the other one is not. And before, the Wahhabi one was being courted and supported by the former government. Now it appears that this new government that's in its second term ain't really like pushing one or the other. He just just do what y'all do, right? And so now it's just a matter of who has the biggest presence online, who has the loudest speakers, who got the Vegas or who got the Gemini, what's the Gemini speakers, right? So if you're not maintaining your website, just like any place else, maintaining your website on social media, if you're not active like that, people are not going to know you exist. They've been used to, hearing these other guys for so long, and they're very active. That's why when it comes to teaching and spreading the truth, we can't get lazy. We got to be diligent. When we don't feel like teaching, we got to teach. Because some other people, they ain't going to get tired. They're going to keep going. And so, see, that's one of the good benefits that we can bring to the people here. Like, we've been dealing with this stuff. Y'all don't have no reason to deal with it. Y'all got a long history. Y'all just got to have integrity and not be brought out. That's the only thing they got to offer you is money coming from the Gulf. But alhamdulillah. Oh, and another thing about the Zakatul Fitra. The Zakatul Fitra, it benefits you, the one who's giving it, because what it does on a spiritual level is that any weakness or deficiencies in your fast, that this Zakatul Fitra is supposed to help you atone for it. Maybe you said something that you wasn't supposed to say, or you did something that you wasn't supposed to do, or you lost your temper. That's what the Zakatul Fitra does for you on a spiritual level. On a tangible level, the outward stated purpose mentioned by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is so that the people can, who are less fortunate, could have some food and celebrate on the Eid. That's why it's always stressed that you have to pay it before the Eid, and you don't have to wait to the last minute. Pay it now, right, or last week, right? Pay it. You can pay it well in advance. But if for whatever reason you do pay it after the Eid, it's counted as regular sadaqah. So don't lose the spiritual blessing of being lazy. I know how we are. We the people of procrastination. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to do it, but I'll get to it. And we get to it late. Getting to it late with this issue could, hurt your spiritual benefit of getting some of those sins that you've been doing during the month of Ramadan taken care of and wiped out or atoned for. Because that's what Zakatul Fitra is for you, the giver, on the spiritual level. So don't be, like we know are colored people times CPT, dragging, delaying stuff for no reason. Pay a Zakatul Fitra for your own sake. So it won't be just counted as just regular sadaqah. It will count as Zakatul Fitra. Alhamdulillah. Is anyone out there? Is anyone out there? Is anyone?
Oh, I was talking and had myself muted. As I stated, today is Thursday. We will not be having a Half Your Dean show. I know y'all been wondering when we're going to come on because of the internet and because of the time, difference. We decided to take a break, but we'll be back after Ramadan and when the Imam returns, inshallah. But in the meantime, Juma Mubarak. Alhamdulillah, which is the last Friday of Ramadan. Please take full advantage of it. Send abundant prayers upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Make dua for your brothers and sisters in Islam that are alive and who has returned back to him. Make dua for your children, for our families, for our communities, for yourselves. Take advantage of this time. Do not time waste like we are waiting at the bus stop, waiting for the bus to come, like waiting for Ramadan to get out of here. This is the most uh, a blessed time that you can spend right now because Allah has allowed you to see it. So please don't be wasteful of it. Keep us in your du'as. We ask you to support the different platforms I put into the thread, different platforms, fundraising campaigns. Please support them because we got. We all we got. And we have to support one another if we want to see an improvement in our situation, in our families, in our society. And with that being said, did you have anything else to mention?
Yeah, what she said.
I did not. So with that being said, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. And don't forget Laylatul Qadr. Do not forget to take advantage of these evenings, these nights, to ask Allah for what you need and just call out to Him because He hears you and He wants to hear from you. So don't withdraw. Open yourself up to that. No matter what your situation may be, no matter how bad it looks. And I just wanted to say that. So, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone.